Eternal God, we thank you for your love. We thank you, dear Lord, for your grace. We ask, dear Lord, that you would open us up so that we might receive your grace, that we might realize that instead of just doing things, we can receive your grace. So open us up now, dear Lord, for a healthy and vibrant consideration and discussion about grace and where it may be leading us. We say this in all prayers in the name of your Son, Jesus the Christ, and it's for his sake we pray. Amen. Amen. I think we're 12 feet now. And all right, yeah. This has nothing to do with grace, but the eyeglass people will sell you something, a little tiny bottle for $8 that will prevent your eyeglasses from fogging uh, because of the mask. And they say that if your eyeglasses are fogging up, that the mask is not on properly. So the workaround for fogging is an $8 bottle, which I have not purchased. Um, Before I begin, is there anything anybody wants to say? Anybody in the room or anybody out there in Zoom world? Does anybody have anything? We're open to anything. Okay, alrighty. Well, does anybody besides me have the book? Okay, alrighty. I have some notes here, and I'm just going to follow my notes. And we agreed that we would consider chapters 4 and 5. So I want you to turn first to page 43. First to page 43. I'm sorry? That's okay. That's okay. We're in the grace business. Okay. First to page 43. And I'm going to go ahead and just read what's here on page 43 because it's so descriptive. And it opens, you're tired. Fatigue is not a foreign word. You know all too well its fruit. Burning eyes, slumped shoulders, gloomy spirit, and robotic thoughts. You are tired. We are tired. A tired people, a tired generation, a tired society. We race, we run, work weeks drag like Arctic winters. Monday mornings show up on Sunday night. We slug our way through the long lines and the long hours with faces made long by the long list of things we need to do, gadgets we want to buy, or people we want to please, grass to cut, weeds to pull, teeth to clean, diapers to change, carpets, kids, canaries, everything needs our attention. The government wants more taxes. The kids want more toys. The boss more hours. The school more volunteers. The spouse more attention. The parents more visits. And the church, oh, the church. Have I mentioned the church? Serve more, pray more, attend more, host more, read more. And what can you say? The church speaks for God. Every time we catch our breath, something else, a taskmaster, demands another brick for the newest pyramid. I just thought that was, you know, the title of this chapter in this book is called "You Can Rest Now." You can rest now, and that's another way of saying you have grace. You can rest now. I don't know about you guys, but well, my kids are home now, so that just adds another layer of things to do. Um, but I'm sure we've all seen and been in situations where there have been expectations, this expectation to be perfect. I mean, and it's like, and if there's any way to kind of go wrong, it's to try to be perfect and try to be all things to all people. You just can't do it. And I mean, to be quite honest with you, that's a particular trap, and I'm not sure trap is the right word, but it's a particular trap that ministers can find themselves in, and those of us in the life of the church, where we think we have to do more, when in fact God has already granted us grace. God's already said, and it's and again, what I love so much about how Lucado writes is he makes things so clear. But God has already said, you can rest now. You can rest now. It's such an incredible burden to be taken off our shoulders. But let me read a little bit further. Um, and this is about a section where this what I'm going to read comes after he talks about, like, as a young person trying to figure out how to live his life and how to be a decent person. But I'm on page 47 now, where um, he's middle way through the page. It says, "Yet for all the talk about being good, still no one can answer the fundamental question: what level of good is good enough?" Bizarre. At stake is our eternal destination, yet we are confident about lasagna recipes that, well, yet we are more confident about lasagna recipes than the entrance requirements for heaven. God has a better idea. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not yourselves, it is the gift of God. We contribute nothing. Zilch. I think I should read that again. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is a gift from God. We contribute nothing. Zilch. As opposed to the merit badge of a scout, salvation of the soul is unearned, a gift. Our merits merit nothing. God's work merits everything. This was Paul's message to he has people he calls grace-a-lots. I picture his face red, fist clenched, and blood vessels bulging on his neck. Christ redeemed us from that self-defeating, cursed life by absorbing it completely into himself. That's from Galatians chapter 3. So not, and earlier in the chapter, he talks about, the Hebrews building making an analogy between us and Hebrews building pyramids and making bricks. Um, so it says, say no to pyramids and bricks. Say no to rules and lists. Say no to slavery and performance. Say no to Egypt. Jesus redeemed you. Do you know what this means? Apparently, they didn't. If you don't, I know the cause of your fatigue. You need to trust God's grace. You need to trust God's grace. Did you guys hear that out there in Zoom land? You need to trust God's grace. I'm going to skip a little bit further over here. It says, attempts at self salvation. Think about that for a second. Attempts at self salvation. Think about how arrogant that is. Self salvation, trying to do God's work. Attempts at self-salvation guarantee nothing but exhaustion. We scamper and scurry, trying to please God, collecting merit badges and browning points, and scowling at anyone who questions our accomplishments. Call us the church of hound dog faces and slumped shoulders. Stop it once and for all. Enough of this frenzy. Your hearts should be strengthened by God's grace, not by obeying rules. Jesus does not say, "Come to me, all you are who are perfect and sinless." Just the opposite, says Jesus. "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." There is no fine print. A second shoe is not going to drop. God's promise has no hidden language. Let grace happen, for heaven's sake. No more performing for God, no more clamoring after God. Of all the things you must earn in life, God's unending affection is not one of them. You have it. You have it. God's unending affection is not something you need to work for. You have it. You have it. And I just love this line, these two lines. Stretch yourself out in the hammock of grace. You can rest now. You can rest now. And those are the closing words of chapter 4. The title of that chapter is "You Can Rest Now." And what I want to do is just turn your attention to, how did I do that? uh, I'm looking at my notes and I see something that doesn't quite make sense. But I want to go to the back of the book, the study guide that's been put together, or the reader's guide. And I'm going to call our attention to, oh, actually, my notes make sense now. Yeah, yeah, I'm on page 176 now. And I just want to, right there at the top, it says, "Grace is not blind. It sees the hurt full well, but grace chooses to see God's forgiveness even more. It refuses to let hurts poison the heart." And what I want to do is just, jump down to question number 4. And the only one I want to ask you to read, could anybody got a Bible handy, or Bible handy? Yeah. I want us to just take a moment and look at Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Okay, can you read that aloud? We have a microphone.
Okay. All right, is it on? Okay. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
Okay, you can stop now. But read that again. Read that again.
Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
Okay, just one more time. And
Okay. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
okay, and I will give you rest. Rest. It's. I don't know about you, but it's easy to get preoccupied with expectations. And if there were ever a job or a responsibility where people have expectations, it's being a minister. There is this expectation that you're going to be this perfect human being. I want to go on record and say I am not. I've probably pretty clearly demonstrated that by now. Uh, you laugh, huh? Yeah. No, but really, if there's any way to kind of go in for any of us to kind of go wrong, it's like to have this expectation that we're supposed to be perfect, or that any of us are supposed to be perfect. Um, I remember, just kind of along the way of this life, um, I remember somebody whose goal, the goal was to be a soccer mom. You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Being a mom is important, but to get kind of caught up in the culture of a community that's, where the kids are doing everything, but they're all doing soccer. I mean, I could think of, I don't, me personally, I can think of other things you might want to, want to do, besides like be behind the wheel of a minivan. But, you know, I'm probably stepping on somebody's toes right now. Um, Forgive me, that's not the intention. Um, if there's any intention on my part, it's to say, um, the roles. We don't have to play these parts. One of the things I keep, and I'm gonna have to go to my phone right now and look this up. I have been telling Bob there for about um, 3 weeks now that I was going to send him the words of this poem by Paul Lawrence Dunbar. I have not yet, but I'm gonna read it right now. And I got to tell you the funny thing about what's amusing to me about this poem is its clarity. How it speaks to all of us. And this is a poem written by Paul Lawrence Dunbar. It's something that comes out of the African American tradition. And I remember the first time I shared it with the East Rochester congregation. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to share this unusual, insightful aspect of Black life with them. But I read the poem. The poem says, "We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile, and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be otherwise in counting our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but, O great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, but oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask." And the thing that kind of blew me away, I'm thinking I'm doing this cross-cultural thing with folks. The thing that blew me away was after hearing this poem, nobody blinked. Nobody was surprised, by these words, by this notion that, we were, we you can rest now. That's like you can rest now. Whatever you think you were supposed to be doing, just chill. As the kids used to say, just chill. Take a chill. Anybody besides me know the expression "take a chill pill"? Okay, just take a chill pill. All right. But yeah, "Come unto me, all ye who are heavy and laden, and I will give you rest." It's like, we take on these, sometimes we take on burdens, and sometimes some stuff is just, sometimes I'm not saying don't, you know, deal with your responsibilities. I'm not saying that for a second. But I am saying you can rest now. or not. That's what God is saying. You can rest now. Uh, but now, one of the things I want to do, and why? Bear with me for 1 second. Yes, sir. Hold on. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. We have a microphone.
When you hear that scripture, there's two parts to it. One, you're resting, but you're also turning things over to God.
Right.
So the job still gets done, but it gets done His way.
Right. Right. You got to turn stuff over to God. Turn stuff over to God. But also, I think turn your burdens over to God. Turn your burdens. Come unto me, all ye who are heavy laden. Turn your burdens over to God. Yeah.
Can I just read the next verse? Because
Sure.
to me, this is a really good one.
Sure.
Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find, get this, rest for your souls.
Okay.
To me, that's powerful.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Rest for
Take
your
my
souls.
yoke and learn from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We got a hand in the back, Connie.
Yeah, I'm supposed to, it's, Anita says that if I hold the mic in front of people that I'm closer than 6 feet. So if you could just say what you want to say, please.
When we were reading on page 47, it bothers me a bit here, where it says, God has a better idea, and then quotes Ephesians, Paul, but it says we contribute nothing. But then if you read the verse, for by grace you have been saved through faith. Seems to me we contribute faith. God is offering,
Okay.
God is offering grace freely. So we have to accept it.
Right.
We accept it through our faith.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of goes back to my mind to John 3:16, where God so loved the world, he gave his only son, that he who believes in him is saved.
Right.
We need to accept that grace. And that's where I was kind of counter a little bit of Max Lucado.
Yeah, and you make a good point.
So Mark's saying that although Max Lucado says you don't have to do anything, that really if you look in the Bible verses, it says you do need to receive the grace and you do need to have faith that the grace is coming.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and let me just say what you said so eloquently. We contribute faith. That's our contribution. Um, and faith is not, shoveling the driveway. Faith is faith. Faith is faith. Um, yeah, and at some point, somebody will tell me how we handle snowstorms around here. I mean, I guess that's a trustee will tell me about that. I guess. Um, but we contribute faith. Now, what I want to do right now is y- all of this next thing I want to do. It's all very personal, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot. Okay, but what I want to do is I want to read these questions, and just we're going to take a moment and prayerfully consider what the question is asking. And if you have to say something aloud, go ahead and say it. But right now, really, it's just like this is a moment when I want everybody to kind of reflect, internally um, on these questions. And this is on page 173. What makes you tired? What needs your attention right now? How is this related to your spiritual life? What makes you tired? What needs your attention right now? How is this related to your spiritual life? Let me go on to, and I want to encourage folks in your time, in your quiet time, look at these questions on page 173. The next one is, what aspect of our culture propels us toward an earned salvation mentality? How can we recast our thinking? This is, to my mind, this is for reasons that will eventually become clear, is one of the better questions. What aspect of our culture propels us toward an earned salvation mentality? How can we recast our thinking? Let me go to, I'm going to skip question 3. Is it hard for you to trust God's grace? Why or why not? Is it hard for you to trust God's grace? Why or why not? I'm going to skip question 5, go to question 6. How is the Christian life different for people who rest on grace alone than for those who work to earn it? What are the practical implications of trusting God's grace alone? I do need to kind of tell you this story about personal story. It's my senior year in high school. It was the end of my senior year in high school, and pretty much everything was in order. And relatively speaking, everything was kind of in the order that it needed to be. That it's in terms of, kind of, the social reality. Everything was kind of in order, and I couldn't go to sleep. It's like, wait a minute, I couldn't go to sleep, so I just needed to share that out loud. Well, here, not well. You can do with that what what you think, but I'm kind of like everything was good, and I had trouble going to sleep. Um, what theological problems arise when we believe we must be good to earn God's favor? What theological problems arise when we believe we must be good to earn God's favor? I'm going to go ahead and take a stab at answering that one. The Apostle Paul said, his grace is sufficient. And if you think you have to earn God's favor, you don't believe that his grace is sufficient. That's the problem. What is spiritual weariness? Have you experienced a season of spiritual fatigue?
Yeah, uh,
When
they're working on the fixing Pastor Phil's mic. The battery must have died.
just came on. It wasn't on before. Got a battery clock? Yep.
I know you weren't asking for people to respond, but it does seem to me that if we are not trusting in God's grace, that we don't have, that we don't have to work for it, that Jesus died in vain. And that's really hard to say.
Battery went dead. Okay.
Okay, now he's getting the new mic on.
Could you repeat that?
So what I was saying is that you hadn't asked us for any comments, but I thought I'd just jump in that if, as you were saying, that if we don't believe that God's grace is enough, then we don't believe in God's grace. And also, my thought is that we don't believe that Jesus died for us.
Mm-hmm.
It really kind of negates that Jesus went to the cross and died for us.
Yeah. Or lived for us.
Uh,
We don't believe that Jesus lived for us. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. But let me just read one more time. This question number 8. What is spiritual weariness? Have you experienced a season of spiritual fatigue? How is spiritual rest a holy assignment? How do you move from weariness to rest in the Lord? So what I think would be useful, and we'll do this, I'm done with this particular chapter, but what will be useful for all of us will be to take a look at these questions at the back of the book, that are under the heading ask. Spend some time with those questions. Because, to me, they remain challenging. They remain challenging, and they continue to question me. Um, but I do want to just go ahead and read some, and this kind of works in both directions, and we'll get to that not this week, but certainly next week. Um, but I want to read, what he points out here on page 174. It says, think about situations in which you have experienced the joy of serving others without expecting acknowledgement or reward. Make a list only for yourself of occasions when someone cared for you or helped you without telling anyone else. Consider other examples of living a grace-shaped life, not out of a desire to earn God's approval, but rather because his gift of grace motivates people to be grace givers. Then it says, this week plan to be a grace giver, silently, secretly, and then thank God for the opportunity. One of my personal challenges, I try to, challenge myself is to kind of like, actually, is to just like not sort of not be noticed. Just try to do stuff quietly, and it's a challenge because I too kind of want the attaboy and the pat on the back. I'll admit to that, but I'm also saying I need to challenge myself to like not, it's like, okay, we're going to live without the attaboy, knowing that God is deeply in love with me no matter what goes on. So that's, just my own personal reflection on that. Anybody, before we move to There are 5. Does anybody have anything they want to raise? All is quiet. Okay. Well, let me just look at my notes here. My notes say, this page 54. Well, just make note of this chapter. It's called Wet Feet. And I'll just, tell you ahead of time that page 54 to me is kind of like how we're supposed to live. You know? Page 54, all it says is to accept grace is to accept the vow to give it. So I can't sit around and be blessed by God, relieved by the gifts of God's grace, and not think or not know that I have an obligation to extend it. It's like this: we are God's hands and feet. Um, I remember being told once that love has hands and love has feet. Love has hands and love has feet. Um, but I've always liked and even thought to myself, actually, page 54, it could be said, is the whole reason I said let's pick up this book. It's because it does set up a dynamic for how our relationships ought to be. Um, because our service to one another is our service to God. It's and Jesus is quite clear, and it's a little sensitive and touchy, but Jesus is quite clear about you know service to Jesus is what have you done for the least of these? When I was in prison, did you visit me? When I was sick, did you visit me? Um, but to accept grace, to accept Jesus is also to accept the call that Jesus has, the claim rather, the claim that Jesus has on our lives. But there's some things. Now, this chapter, the title of the chapter is "Wet Feet," and that's kind of catchy. But if you actually read this chapter, it's principally he spends some time talking about Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. But what I want to do is I want to start. I just love the way he writes and brings things so clearly. So that he's talking about you know Jesus washing his disciples' feet, but then he makes the point. He goes, Jesus touched the stinky, ugly parts of his disciples, knowing that he came from God, knowing that he was going to God, knowing that he could arch an eyebrow or clear his throat, and every angel in the universe would snap to attention. Knowing that all authority was his, he exchanged his robe for a servant's wrap, lowered himself to knee level, and began to rub away the grime, the grit, and the grunge their feet had collected on the journey. Can y'all connect to that analogy? Is that that analogy? Let me just read it again. Knowing that all authority was his, he exchanged his robe for the servant's wrap, lowered himself to knee level, and began to rub away the grime, the grit, and their grunge their feet had collected along the journey. Anybody got anything to say about that? Okay. There's one of the expressions I've heard people say that I've always liked is people, speaking of Jesus, people will say, he picked me up and turned me around and planted my feet on solid ground. Now, somehow or the other, that comes to mind reading that. We got a comment. Go ahead. Okay.
So
Let me, I'll repeat that. Somebody says, what a relief to not to have to earn grace. What a relief to not to have to earn it. What a relief to know that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever should believe in him should not perish, but would have everlasting life. What a relief. Thank you for whoever made that. Who? Sally. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Sally. What a relief to not to have to earn grace. Um, yeah, sure. Hold on,
go ahead.
so the people in the okay. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Bob Hawke's making the point that uh, just as Jesus washed people's feet, we need to be humble and do whatever's needed for serving others. Is that did I kind of get it? To follow Jesus' example of humility, which was really, really made clear in his washing the dirty feet of the disciples.
Mm-hmm. Do we have something else coming in from? Okay. Uh, forgive me, but I just need to read this again. Just read so beautifully. Jesus, knowing that all authority was his, he exchanged his robe for the servant's wrap, lowered himself to knee level, and began to rub away the grime, the grit, and the grunge their feet had collected on the journey. This makes me, well, what you just said and this together makes me think of, the opening to Paul's letter to the Philippians, where it says something to the effect of he humbled himself and became a servant. He did not use, the power that he had, in order to do the things you can do when you control the universe. He humbled himself and became a servant. Okay, so I'm not going to read that again. Let me 57 to, yes, sir.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I always liked about Jesus was that he could be interrupted in what he was doing. I'm not sure what the mission was that day, but he stopped and did something that wasn't really on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So Bob Smith's saying that one neat thing about Jesus is that he could be interrupted. It wasn't like if someone came to him, he would stop what he was doing and pay attention to them.
Mm-hmm.
Follow-up to that is that I don't usually like to get interrupted particularly when I'm doing something. So when you think about it, it's the best time to give grace to someone else. Someone comes along and stops what you're doing, and you put all your attention on their need. That's really an opportunity to give grace the way Christ did it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Bob Smith's continuing that he doesn't like to be interrupted, but it is when someone does come along that needs your help, that really is one of the best ways to serve Christ, is follow his example.
Mm-hmm.
There's a comment online that Mother Teresa, that's a very good example of someone who could be interrupted and was very humble.
Hmm. Okay, so let's see. There is something on page 61 that I want to point out. Grace is not blind. This is the second paragraph on page 61. Grace is not blind. It sees the hurt full well. But grace chooses to see God's forgiveness even more. It refuses to let hurts poison the heart. See to it that no one misses the grace of God and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many. That's from Hebrews chapter 12. Where grace is lacking, bitterness abounds. Where grace abounds, forgiveness grows. Um, I'll go out on a limb and say, we could probably spend some time trying to figure out what that means exactly for this season that we've gone through recently. Where grace is lacking, bitterness abounds. Where grace abounds, forgiveness grows. Um, so again, let's just kind of go back to the question, the reader's guide. And I'm going to page 176 here. And again, I want to do the same thing that we did uh, with this last section, is just read these and ask you to reflect on them. Just read these and ask you to reflect on them. Jesus humbly washed the feet of men who alternately followed him, doubted him, loved him, and betrayed him. In the washing of the disciples' feet, Jesus said, I have given you an example that you should done as I have done to you. Then it says, think about someone who has hurt you or been disloyal to you. Are you willing to serve that person in love as Jesus did? How can you wash that person's feet? Let me just read that again. Jesus humbly washed the feet of men who alternately followed him, doubted him, loved him, and betrayed him. Think about that for a second. Jesus washed the feet of people who doubted him, loved him, and betrayed him. Oh, we might want to spend some time considering that. Well, one of the challenges, at least I find, you've all heard that expression, preaching to the choir. All right, sometimes I just feel like I'm preaching to the people that get it. you know, I I I I I think we need to, or at least find a way to really reach out. Yeah, and this makes me think of something that's on my mind. Let me not go off topic here. Um, it says here, think about someone who has hurt you or been disloyal to you. How are you willing to serve that person in love as Jesus did? How can you wash that person's feet? Then the next one is most people keep a pot of anger on low boil. I hear chuckling out there. Somebody can relate. Most people keep a pot of anger on low boil. Does this describe you now or in the past? What caused you to feel this way? What was the resolution? most people keep a pot of anger on low boil. And next question. Yeah, okay.
Going back to that other question about what can you do to wash another person's feet who has hurt you, it reminds me of the grace note that you suggested we write to one another.
Mhm.
That was kind of like washing somebody else, a person's feet that you might have a little problem with.
That was a shot at that. I think we should probably we can't do that often enough. I mean, at some point in the not too distant future, I'm gonna ask that crowd that got the cards and
We still
distribute them.
have some left.
Say
Yes.
what?
We still have some left.
We still have some left. Yeah, we could probably do that again. We could
So,
probably do that again.
Barb Hawk made the point that trying to wash each other's feet, sending the grace notes, sending the little cards that Pastor Phil had suggested here maybe a month or so ago, was a way of doing that, a way of washing others' feet.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's what we do. That's when you kind of think about like what our particular enterprise is. Our enterprise is we are in the grace business. That's our business. And one of the things that we need to be sensitive to is that some of the work, much of the work that is before us is going to require us considering things we haven't considered before. And we're going to come up against some edges, I suspect, that it was like, we'd rather kind of put the mask on and just kind of smooth it over and forget about it altogether, than actually dealing with um, some of these deeply buried issues. We'd rather kind of smooth it over. Let's not talk about it. One of the things in an effort to kind of be brief, this morning, one of the things I left out of my remarks was that when you put a map together, you don't leave anything out. You don't, yeah, it's kind of too bad that, well, not too bad. It's unfortunate that, we went in, it's unfortunate that we went up into the Adirondacks during black fly season. That doesn't mean take the Adirondacks off the map. That doesn't mean that. Just because we went into that section where I haven't seen any snakes up there. Are snakes part of this ecosphere? I'm getting yes, they are. But just because we went in a particular area and we got the bejesus scared out of us doesn't mean that you leave it off the map. You have to acknowledge the role that the black flies played and choices that you made, and acknowledge the role that the snake bite played in how things went. You can't leave it out. You can't leave it out. The I remember one time trying to describe someone to somebody else, and I used what I thought were clear terms. Um, they were rather, they were. I think I was being clear and direct. Uh, and actually, it was somebody from the South. And if there were ever a group of folks that were had a degree of sophistication about speaking about things, try to have a conversation with a Southerner and figure out what they're really talking about. But this person, they just kind of smoothed over the reality, in such a way where you wouldn't, if between what they said and an encounter with that person would have been like, you'd go, that's not what, you know, Harry was talking about. This is like what Harry described and what I experienced were two different things. Yeah. So if I'm attempting to make a point, it's you have to identify everything that's on the map. And you have to, and also to be willing to kind of like pick up the soil, look at it, you know, let it sift through your hands and kind of understand its texture. And it's sort of like what I was saying this morning about try to get the big picture, get a full and total assessment of stuff. Moving right along. Anybody got any comment out there? No comments. Okay. I want to, number 4. Jesus was willing to serve those men who doubted and betrayed him. When we are unwilling to serve those who have wronged us, what does it say about our perception of ourselves? Chew on that for a while. I don't have any easy answers about that. In the past, did the desire for justice hamper your willingness or ability to forgive? How? What was the result? So you're thinking about that. You're asking yourself questions. I mean, you could spend a whole year with this book. you we spent a lifetime getting to this moment. We could spend a year with this book. As you've read this chapter on forgiveness and gone through these study questions, have you thought of a person who needs your forgiveness? What will you do to let go of the anger you're holding on to? As you've read this chapter on forgiveness and gone through these study questions, have you thought of a person who needs your forgiveness? What will you do to let go of the anger you're holding on to? Are the sins you commit of greater importance to you, truly, than the offenses against you? What happens when you focus on your own sins? What happens when you focus on the offenses committed against you? How can people change their perspectives so they can see their own sins in light of God's unrelenting grace? Does anybody in here have anything that has troubled them for a long time? You don't have to answer that. You don't have to put your hand up. It's like, yeah. But and that's where grace comes in. That's where grace comes in. It's like, some of us have things that have troubled us for a long time. And the only, this is what I intended to cover today. I mean, we could have done some more. But the one thing, and this is tough. This is tough. This is tough. Because there's a degree of, not a degree. There's an awful lot of discernment involved in what I'm about to say. One of the things that life has taught me is that sometimes being graceful moves into the area of enabling bad behavior. Sometimes being graceful just slips right on over into, enabling bad behavior. Um, that's all I got. Yeah, that's all I got. So anything out there? No. Microphones coming your way. Okay.
Sometimes forgiveness does not cause one to feel anger. The one who needs to forgive someone else is deeply hurt and loses self respect and loses self value. And forgiving is not because you're angry. Someone else has been angry to you. And as you forgive them, you lose your sense of who you are, the boundaries of what can you take without being hurt. Next chapter, perhaps, speak more about person who has low self-esteem and forgiving all the time, but doesn't feel any better. The anger part is outside the whole thing. The anger is not part of forgiveness. It's the hurt. No?
You're saying anger is not a part of forgiveness.
Anger is what? Oh,
You said not.
well, anger can cause someone to be deeply hurt. Then that person must forgive the anger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Feeling anger is foreign to that kind of person, perhaps. There's some strength. Anger gives one some strength, I think.
Anger what?
Anger can bestow strength. If you have a righteous feeling of anger, it must be a strong feeling. And I'm just dealing with other thoughts. Different people are different. And,
Yeah, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that anger, you need to, well, really, it's like, that's not going to get you anywhere. Uh, Now, it may inform your consciousness about stuff, to a place where you can begin to do the work to try to transform something. But the anger is information. You can treat anger like information. Um, but if you allow it to become more than that, and don't allow it to become information that you use to attempt to have some kind of transformation, you got nothing. I mean, use an example. Um, the and here's a hot button issue. But the murder of George Floyd exposed a fissure of anger. The but piece of it, though, is that people took that anger and said, okay, well, wait a minute. We need to transform this. We need to transform this anger and these feelings we have into policy such that this doesn't happen again. So you see the move, you take the anger and you use it as information and say, okay, what do I do with this information? Because I don't want this to happen anymore. And I think oftentimes we don't use our own power, and I'm talking about each and every one of us, to basically say, don't do that again. Just don't do that again. Don't don't do that again. I mean, we're entitled to say, don't do that again. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Hold on. Okay. Okay. We're getting a homework assignment. Hold on for a second. We don't have to.
Right.
We don't have to share, but what if we take some time and reflect, and then someone might be willing to start off the next one with a sharing. So you give us time to formulate our sharing.
Sure.
I know you can't be the school.
Oh.
There you go.
Sure.
So Alyssa's saying that on page 178, there's a statement that says, think about your words, and that might be a good homework assignment, especially as sometimes with our anger, we say words that we later regret, and that might be a good way to start next week.
Oh, how did this get so much louder all of a sudden? We won't worry about that. Okay. Okay, so there's your homework assignment on page 178. Keep close tabs on your words this week. Whenever you start to complain or grumble about something, someone or something, remind yourself that you're forgiven by a gracious God. Ask God to show you how to reflect his grace in that relationship or situation. Follow his leading and rejoice in a gracious attitude. Okay, so between, it just suddenly got louder. All right, we won't worry about that. So between now and next week, spend some time reflecting on, this question posed on page 178. And I'd also ask you to spend some time with each of these chapters and going through these questions in the section called Ask. Do that. And does anybody else have anything else they want to raise? Okay. So also on page 178 is a prayer, and we'll close with this. Lord God, gracious Father, you have reached down from heaven and poured your forgiveness over me. Though once I was drowning in my own sin, now I'm floating in your mercy. Whenever my righteous indignation starts to surface, please show me my own sin. Let gratitude for your immeasurable gift of grace supersede any inclination I have for revenge. Remind me of my hopeless condition without you, so I can share with others the great grace you've given me. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen.